So you've been in the role now, I think just over a year. So I know you're there. You've made some moves. I'd love to just hear, before we get into your backstory, what was the opportunity kind of outside looking in before you took the role at Morgan Stanley? What was the position of the brand? What did you notice about them in the marketplace that you saw, wow, this is a big opportunity for me to come in and make some shifts and make some changes and bring some value? Talk about that part, because I'm really curious about what you saw, and then we'll transition to kind of when you got there.
Yeah. So I've always, and it's interesting because when we get to the backstory, one of the hallmarks of my career is I do work for a lot of really good brands and a lot of consumer focused, long-standing legacy brands. And so Morgan Stanley was one of those for me. I've always known of the brand. I knew roughly what they did, maybe not every aspect, like the institutional investment banking side of things, but definitely the wealth management areas and the research and some of those things, and always had a very good impression of the brand in terms of quality, standing, integrity, authenticity. But I would say with that, I always sort of felt like it was not a brand for me, because I felt like it had some characteristics that are pretty traditional in terms of financial services. What I found out after looking at the brand and doing some research, and then actually through some of the integration with E-Trade, is that the brand has a wealth of sort of modern technologies and capabilities. Part of the reason the firm purchased or acquired E-Trade was for the advancements in technology and technical capabilities, to be more appealing to broader audiences, because they have things that can serve you from very early on in your wealth journey all the way through your IPO and you're sort of working or being the CEO of a big firm. So there's a host of products and services and things that the firm has that serve all audiences. So for me as a marketer, telling that story and sort of changing perceptions of people who traditionally maybe don't feel certain financial services firms are for them, was a great opportunity.
I want to stay on that just a little bit more. That's great. I mean, when you made the shift, you're entering into this industry that, like you said, there's a persona in that world. There's a frequency in that world, and here you are stepping into a lot of responsibility, a lot of leadership, and you have a lot of capability to do that. How were you received in that world? How were you received in this world that was definitely in majority not run by women leaders?
I would say one of the things that I love most about Morgan Stanley is the culture. It's very collaborative and very collegial. So, what was an interesting dynamic is E-Trade was acquired. We found out about it as officers of the E-Trade firm about a month before COVID hit. So I have never met any of the leaders at Morgan Stanley face to face until about a year and a half after we first started working together. And so we did a lot of things in terms of, Zoom calls and Zoom happy hours and getting to know you. But one thing that was common was just people were very willing to give you their time, to share, what they know about the business and the firm, and their clients. Many of the employees are really long tenured. And so that says something about a company, that people feel they're able to move around, they're able to try new things, they're able to be innovative, all in the space of the same firm over a 25 to 30 year career. And so I found all of that really, really great to join. The executive leaders were really did a lot to embrace the Morgan Stanley, the E-Trade leadership team. And they always talked about, and I think James talked about this externally to the firm, that it was really a strategic acquisition to broaden their base of clients and to broaden their platforms, capabilities, and products and services. And that's how you felt as someone joining the firm, where it was sort of additive. You weren't efficiency, you weren't a cost opportunity, you were bringing in new thinking. And then for the firm itself, Morgan Stanley had really traditionally been a sales-based culture, face-to-face interactions with FAs and investment bankers and private wealth managers, and then on the institutional side. And so marketing, direct consumer, was not a strong skill set within the firm. And so coming in as a marketer and someone who has digital and client experience work, it was really embraced and leveraged and capitalized within the company very quickly.
Wow. What was your, it's always interesting to hear what the first 90 days are like when you take a role like this at a Morgan Stanley, because there's nuance and it can be subjective, but I've heard lots of different answers from CMOs, like what they do when the first 90 days. Some of them are really quiet. Marissa Mayer came in, we interviewed her in our studio and talked about when she took over at Yahoo, and she got a lot of heat because it seemed like she wasn't doing anything in the first 90 days. She was very quiet. She was meeting very strategically. Some CMOs go in and they start kind of pulling things apart and rebuilding right away. You've had a lot of incredible experience. I mean, AT&T, Citibank, the list goes on and on. What was your approach in the first 90 days? What was some of the things that you're kind of thinking, doing at a storied brand like Morgan Stanley?
Yeah. An old mentor of mine told me at one point in my career, you have 2 ears and one mouth for a reason. And so I would have to say I skew on the Melissa side, which is I spent the first 90 days really listening. And it was, I would say, sort of a very active form of listening. I set up time with all of the key stakeholders who work with the marketing team and organization, all of the critical business unit partners, again, that either work with the team or are reliant on the marketing, the events, the digital work that we do. And then many of the senior leaders across the firm, as well as select board members. And as I did that, I really just listened and I asked a couple of key questions. One was, sort of, what do you see as the biggest opportunities for the firm? What do you see as the biggest challenges? What do you see as those same things for the marketing organization? And then if you could change one thing that marketing does today, what would it be? And what I found through doing, all of that sort of research internally, which was pleasant and has been my experience most of the time, is that there was a lot of synergy across all of these groups as to what are the key opportunities. The key opportunities were to look at the brand and the brand strategy now that we had brought in a number of other brands under the overall master brand and broadened our audience and make sure we true up, sort of the story we're telling, who we're telling it to, and through what channels and how we're telling it in the marketplace. The second area was around data and analytics. How do you measure the effectiveness of marketing in more and better ways? How do you communicate what you're measuring out to the broader organization so they understand, one, what the value is, or two, what are the insights you're getting out of it and how should they be thinking about their products and services differently? The next was really around partner engagement. Like, don't market or be marketing in a vacuum, but how do you more positively, frequently, and strategically interact with your business partners so that the marketing strategy supports the company and the business strategy, and that people feel like there's value and you have a seat at the table when people are planning their strategies. And then the final was around talent. How do we find the marketing talent within the organization and ensure that talent is growing, feeling engaged, and we're able to retain that talent? And then also, how do you attract talent? My goal, once I did all of this, when I looked at, the 90-day strategy, I said my long-term goal is to be the employer of choice, or for Morgan Stanley to be the employer of choice of the next generation of marketers. And so if you want to get to that goal, what are the things that you need to do to bring that talent on, to nurture it, to grow it, and to make sure that you're refreshing it? And so those were the things that I did and found out through the first 90 days.
This podcast is brought to you by Salesforce and the CMO Club. The CMO Club is a global community for senior marketing executives to come together, share ideas, and solve their toughest challenges in a collaborative and trusted environment with other marketing leaders. Salesforce and the CMO Club provide best-in-class programs, events, and a digital platform for marketing leaders to come together and be inspired like never before. Join our global community at thecmoclub.com.